As Hashem, today's daf is daf Chof. Okay, daf Chof Amud Aleph. We're beginning from the Mishnah. Chof Amud Aleph, Masechta Nedarim. Chof Amud Aleph, Umfang von Mishnah, dort top of the page. Nodab, and the Mishnah is talking about that if someone makes a neder, if he explains himself that he didn't really mean the neder, so then no matter how far-fetched his explanation is, we believe him. So the Mishnah gives you an example. Noda b'cherim. The guy says that my loaf of bread should be like a dedication. Now, usually dedication means a neder, a dedication for the Beis Hamikdash, right? So he says my loaf of bread should be like a dedication to the Beis Hamikdash. So technically, we would say that it's a good neder. But Va'amar, then he explained himself and he said, I meant that the word cherim could also mean a net, a fishing net where you catch fish. So he's saying, I meant my bread should be like the fishing net that catches fish, which is a nonsense statement. So basically he's trying to weasel his way out of his neder. Another example. So, and the question of the Mishnah is, do we trust him? And the answer is yes, you trust him. And even though it's a far-fetched explanation, even though he has a far-fetched explanation of what he meant, but we trust him. Okay, next part of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, hi Meir, we just began the Mishnah. B'karban, a man says, my loaf of bread should be like a carbon. Okay, so then your loaf of bread should be usher to like a carbon, like a donated sacrifice. But then he says, V'amar, and he explained himself, and he says, no, I meant that my bread should be like the sacrifices of kings. Like, you know, when a king comes, you offer up a sacrifice for his honor, but it's not something that's holy for the Beis Hamikdash. So he is basically explaining himself that he didn't mean a neder, even though it sounds like he meant neder. Or another example, Hare atzmi carbon. I say my body should be like a carbon. So basically he is saying that my friend should not be able to benefit from all my possessions. Why? He should be able, and this is what you can do in a neder. I can answer my possessions on somebody else by saying I should be like a carbon to that person. So it's a good neder. So the Mishnah says, Hare atzmi carbon. So the Mishnah says, I didn't mean the word neder. I didn't mean the word etzem, my bone. I am myself. I mean etzem mean a bone that I have in the house. That when I use the word etzem, I'm referring to that little bone that I have in my house. Like a souvenir. So that's what I meant. That bone should be holy, but not me. Or he says like this, Kainim ishti nehenesli. He says, my wife should be also to me like a carbon from benefiting from me. So Pashtus, he's saying, my wife cannot no longer benefit from all my possessions. And then he explains himself and he says, and he says, I only made a neder regarding my first wife that I divorced. That means I wasn't referring to my new wife. I was referring to my old wife that I gave a divorce. The problem is, your old wife you don't really call Ishti, my wife. Nevertheless, we say that all these things are not a neder. Akulan, in all these cases, ein nishalin alehem. You don't even have to go to a rabbi to be materit. It's because you explained yourself, and that's the rule. If you say, I don't have an explanation of what I said, you have to decide what I say. Then we say, stam nedarim, you go strict. But if he explains himself, right, he is the one that offering an explanation, and that explains his words in such a way, even though it's far-fetched that he says his explanation is far-fetched, we trust him, and that's itself, the way he defines his words, it's not a neder. He doesn't even a rabbi to get a heter. The in nishalu. Now the Mishnah says that the Mishnah makes an about face. If you would ask a rabbi, now this is a question. You just told me that you don't ask a rabbi. So what the Gemara is going to explain is that if a Talmud Chacham made these Nedarim, right, we trust him. A Talmud Chacham could explain himself away. And Amaretz, he feels a little bit insecure, and he wants to ask a rabbi if he is permitted, if he's permitted to violate, his words. So then, if he goes and asks the rabbi, onshin oisim, then the rabbi will punish him. What does that mean? The rabbi will punish him. He will say, "Look, you made a neder, and then for a period of time, you decided in your mind that it wasn't a neder. So let's say for a week you didn't keep the neder, right? Now you're coming to ask me, did I really have a neder? So first of all, I will tell you, you have to keep the neder at least for the time that you violated the neder. Really, you don't have a neder. I trust you. Your explanation is a good one. But the rabbis go strict on him and says, no, you have to make sure that you pretend that it's a neder, and you have to keep the neder all the days that you violated your neder. And then the rabbi makes it very difficult for him to matter the neder. How does the rabbi make it difficult for him to undo the neder? By normally a neder, you can undo a neder by saying, oh, I regret making this neder. I made it when I was angry, and now I calmed down. I regret having made this neder. A rabbi would accept that as an excuse and will, undo the neder. But to make it difficult, sometimes a rabbi will say that's not enough. If some event had to have been around that you weren't aware when you made the neder, that's called a Pesach. And he has to find a part of the neder that you weren't aware of, and therefore you wouldn't have made the neder. And that makes the process much more difficult to be mater. That's the words of Rab Meir. So Rab Meir says you have to go tough on an Amoritz, and you can understand why. Because an Amoritz keeps shooting things from his mouth, and then he's going to shoot a neder and not realize he really, really has a neder. The Chachamim say, for Chachamim are light. He says we don't have to go so tough on a Amoritz. We right away can open up a Pesach and undo the neder from another place. In other words, not from the neder itself, but we can go and ask him, do you regret the neder? Not that an event you didn't know about when you made the neder, but
you should make fun of him a Pesach, because if you make a Pesach, he always do this because he's waiting for the Pesach.
Right.
You should give him a Meidachkeit to machen a Neder.
Yes.
Because the Neder is nothing for him. If he makes it, then you make a Pesach. You shouldn't give him a Pesach because he's an Amoritz.
So the Chachomim say, you're right, Biskerak, aber Lamasa, they don't want him to have a neder, so they give him miser. They teach him that you did something wrong. They give him miser. They say, okay, we'll matter you the neder this time, but we want to give you stark miser that you did something wrong. Get out of your mouth, and that's not right. Kadesh, like you said, that they shouldn't make it light in their heads that neder is gunish. Like neder is something. Even though, like the Talmud Chacham could easily explain it away, but the Amoritz we go very, very strict on. According to Reb Meir and the Chachamim, a little bit less strict. Zog the Gemara, Hogifa Kasha. The Gemara just explains what I just explained to you in the Mishnah. The Mishnah itself self-contradicts itself. Amrit, first the Mishnah says, Ein Nisholim Lehem. They don't have to go to a rov to matter the neder. It's permitted. They explain they didn't mean neder. We trust them. And then the Mishnah says, in Nishalu, if they go to a Rav, the Rav should punish him, and go strict on them, don't matter it so fast. What's going on over here? Omar Rabbi Huda, exactly what I said. This is the pshat in the Mishnah. Most people don't need a sha'ila. They don't have to go to a rabbi. But when was this says? But Talmud Chacham, a Talmud Chacham. Okay, he let something slip from his mouth. I can understand why he would say something to his wife. Maybe he chepped his wife And he says, I'm also to you. And then he explains, I didn't mean neder. So we trust the Talmud Chacham who knows Hilchos Nedarim that he didn't mean neder, and he could attach his words in such a way that he didn't mean a neder. Amoritz that comes to ask this question, we punish him, on him. So the Gemara says, Bishlam machmirin, what does it mean? You're strict. You don't undo the neder so fast. You don't open up and ask him, do you regret making this neder? That's not a good, you don't make it so easy. You have to find a Pesach, he has to find a certain event that happened that he wasn't aware of when he made the neder. So it takes a little bit longer to be matter the neder. So go strict. What does it mean you punish him? The Mishnah says two things. You punish him, and you make it difficult for him to matter the neder. So what does it mean you punish him? So Kedetanya, like the same thing what we're going to do, like we read in the Brisa, the same way the Brisa punishes somebody by Naziris, so we punish this person by neder. What's the case? Misha Nazar, a man made himself a Nazir. He was over the Naziris, he started drinking wine and cutting his hair, whatever. And then he comes to Bezdin and says, I regret making the Naziris. So let's say he made the Naziris for 30 days, and then by the day 15th, he's out of the Naziris, and he gave up. And now he wants to regret ever making Naziris, so he doesn't have to recount again. We don't mat the neder for him. He has to repeat all those days that he was acting as if it's a permitted day, and he has to redo those days as if he's a Nazir, and after that we're mat his Nazir. So let's say he violated his Naziris for 5 days. So before we are mater his Naziris, he has to have 5 days keeping a Nazir, and then he comes back to Bezdin, and then we'll mater the Naziris. Amar Rabbi Yossi says, when was this said?
So Baruch, there's no way of him getting out of the Naziris. He just has to do it. That's the bottom line.
No. Normally, let's say he made a Naziris for 30 days. He blew it at day 15, right? So technically, he has to recount 30 days. This guy comes and says, I don't want to, I can't do it. I won't be able to last for 30 days. So the best to ask him, okay, you violated your Naziris on day number 15. How many days did you violate your Naziris before coming to us?
Oh, I see. Okay.
He says, I did it for 5 days till day number 20. I said, so they said, keep a Naziris another 5 days, and then we'll come back to be mater you.
So in this case, he doesn't have to do the at least 30 days thing. He just could do it.
He could do another 5 days. He has to redo 5 days.
Understood.
In other words, because what the point is, Bezdin is telling him, why do you wait 5 days before you?
Right.
Bezdin. So
you should come immediately. Gotcha.
You should come immediately. You violated. You should be shaking.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter if you violated everything for Naziris or just part of it. It makes no difference. The slightest violation, a little bit of wine, or he touched his hair. That's it.
That's it, right? And Naziris is disqualified by 3 ways: by touching any wine, cutting the hair, or going to a levaya or something like that. So that as soon as he enters and metam himself, is violated. Amar Rabbi Yossi says, when do you have to recount the Naziris? The Naziris mu'etes. When, let's say, you had a small Naziris, like we're discussing over here, the Naziris was for 30 days, and he violated the Naziris for 5 days. In other words, if it was a large Naziris, let's say he said, I'm 100 days Nazir. Then, day number 50, he violated Naziris for 50 days. So we don't make him redo another 50 days of Naziris. We say that it's enough 30 days. Okay, but the point is that he has to redo Naziris to make up for how come he was violating Naziris before he showed up to Bezdin. So same thing over here. If a Amaretz violated his neder for a few days, and then had this guilty conscience, came to Bezdin, Bezdin won't right away matter the neder. They'll wait. You have to keep the neder for the days that you were violating to combat, to correspond to the days that you violated your neder. Then come back to us, and then we'll matter the neder. Amar Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef says, "Hoil v'amru rabbanan einis kakaloi." Since the rabbi said that a bezdin should not right away undo the person's neder and naziris, if you find a bezdin that does it, there's always a bezdin that will, go lenient on you. They're not doing correctly. That's a bad bezdin. Rav Acha bar Yaakov, you could put that bezdin in the cherem. Because really, it was, the Chachamim wanted that a bezdin should be tough on a person and make him rekeep at least part of the neder that he violated. Tana. This is where the Gemara goes off into a fascinating topic having to do with marital relations that comes into Masechet Nedarim, and it goes into halacha also. First, the Gemara says, Tana, we learned to the Brisa. La'olam al tahei ragil ben nedarim. First of all, a person should not have nedarim, oaths, vows coming out of his mouth, because it could lead to a shvuah. He's going to eventually violate a shvuah, an oath that he took. A shvuah is much worse to violate. Once you accustom yourself to make neders, you're going to accustom yourself to make shvuah, swearing. And if you violate a shvuah, the Chumash says God doesn't forgive you so fast. Ki lo yenakeh. God, it takes a lot to do tshuva on a violated shvuah. Then, don't be accustomed to go out to an amoritz, to go out to eat with an amoritz, or go to his house. He's going to give you to eat untithed, unmeisered fruits and vegetables, and that's an isser. But you have to, you don't want to embarrass him and ask him always, did you give meiser and trumas meiser? And one time he's going to give you to eat, you're not going to ask the question, and you're going to be eating tevel. Alti rogel eitz a kohen am aretz. Don't go next to be friendly and visit the kohen who's an am aretz. He might give you truma to eat or truma tameya to eat. So again, you have a friend who is an amaretz and you're always accustomed to his house. You're not going to want to shame him, so you're going to eventually eat from his kashrus, and you could violate issa daraisa. Then, once we're dealing with don't have excessive conversation with the woman, and probably means any woman. If you have long conversations with the woman, it eventually will come, even if it starts off as a business conversation, it can end up coming to znus. Rav Acha bar Rabbi Yoshia Aimet, Rav Acha says, Kol hat soifer b'nashim, soifer bol l'dei avera. If a man glances at women, eventually he comes to do an avera. In other words, it could be that your business requires you to glance at women, but eventually, if it's from a glance could come to a stare, could eventually leads to other things. So a person should be very careful in that. If a person focuses in ba'akeva shel isha, on the heel of a woman, so basically it doesn't mean the heel of a woman; it means the covered parts of a woman. Havi alein bonim she'einu muhuganim. He will have children that are not proper. In other words, his own children will not be so pure. In other words, they'll not be so innocent. They'll be more loose when it comes to moral values. So that's what it says. You think you're doing the aver, but you're affecting your children as well. And even if you have children already, so your children, you had your children, but what the father does affects his children. Amar Rav Yosef says, if ishte nida, that means you're not allowed to stare at your wife in her private places, even when she's a nida. So it's even if your wife, it's your own wife. But the fact is, at this juncture, she's not permitted to you. You're not allowed to stare at her private places, what she normally covers up. Amar Rav Shimon ben Lakish, akteva diktari is bimkaim hatinoikis, hatinoifis shuhu mechuven keneged ha'ikev. It's referring to what he's trying to say is that a person should not be staring at a woman. He learns that it means that during Tashmish you should not be staring at the Oisei Mokum, that place, the Mokum Erva, which is opposite the heel. So that's what it means. A person should not be staring at that place. It's not good for your mind. Tanya, we learned in the Braitza. Ba'avur tir yerosai al pneichem. God wants fear should be on your face. What does that mean? Zu busha. Now, most people will translate busha means shame, but it doesn't mean shame. Shame is not a good thing. You're not shame means you're defining yourself as a bad person. It means guilt. You have to feel guilty, and guilty means that it's not your fault. But sometimes a person does something, it's not his fault, but they feel guilty about it. Let's say you accidentally pushed a woman on the street as you were running, and you pushed her down. You didn't mean to do it, but you feel guilty about doing it. That's called guilt, a Jewish guilt. Levilti techeto, because this causes you not to do an avera. If you have guilt, it brings you to fear of sin. So you're going to be more careful to the next time. So guilt is a good thing, because when you have guilt, you take more precautions in the future. Mikan Amru, from here we say, Simin Yafeh Ba'adam, a beautiful sign of a person is Shu Baishim, that he has guilt feelings.
Guilt means he did something wrong.
He feels that he knows he did something wrong. Oh. Right. But he's more careful in the future.
Yeah.
He doesn't say I'm a schlechter person. He says that now I know I did something wrong, and I'm going to be careful.
The next time I'm careful.
Right. Others say, "Kol Adam Hamisbayish." If you have this guilt, loy b'meheira hu chayte. You're not going to do an avera in the future. This is a beautiful thing. If you see a person that has no guilt, he never feels guilty about anything. He never does anything wrong. We'd call this today narcissistic. Okay, narcissistic. That they're self-absorbed. So wow, that even you should know that his fathers didn't stand by Har Sinai. Unbelievable. So he might not even be Jewish. You have to question that. Omer Rabbi Yochanan ben Dehavai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Dehavai said, Daled Dvarim. There are 4 things. Sochuli Malachei Asharis. The Malachei Asharis told me 4 things. And Malachei Asharis means, we'll see what that means, but it means great Talmid Chachamim told me a secret of why Nebuch children are born with the deformities. Why are kids born limping? Why? Answers, because when the parents did marital relations, they didn't do it in the normal way. Normally is he's on top, she's on the bottom. They did it the opposite way, where she's on top, he's on the bottom. Ilmim, why do children have a problem with speech and with hearing? Because they're kissing in the wrong spots. They're kissing on the erva. Why do people have a problem hearing? I'm sorry. Ilmin is a problem with speech. Cherish is a problem with hearing. Why children never have a hard time hearing? Because the parents are talking during marital relations. They're not talking about marital relations, they're talking about other topics. Why are never kids born with difficulty seeing? Because the parents during the marital relations are staring at the mokam hatinoifis, the bad place. So the Gemara asks, isn't you're not allowed at all talk during marital relation? Tashmish mitunish redden? Or I'll ask you a stira. Sha'alu es ima shalom. They asked. What? Yeah. They asked the Ima Shalom. Ima Shalom is the wife of Rabbi Lezer. Ima is like Giveret, and Shalom is a name sometimes used for a woman. So Ima Shalom, they asked her a question. We go to Oma Beis. Why do you have such beautiful children? What's so special about you and your husband? She said to them, we never have a conversation. We never do it, or he never talks to me to do marital relations, not in the beginning of the night and not at the end of the night. Because in the beginning of the night, he's thinking about the women he saw during the day. At the end of the night, you might hear another woman from another apartment moving around. So you're not thinking about it. He's not thinking about his wife. He made to only do marital relations during smack in the middle of the night. Because again, the point of pure marital relations is that you're only thinking about your wife. When he talks, in other words, it doesn't mean he's talking. It means when he's doing it, he's very sneistic. He uncovers as much of his body and covers as much as unneeded. In other words, he's very sneistic and he's not doing it without covers. And when he is doing it, he does it so quickly and so in a rush, as if a demon is behind him watching his every move. So he wants to make sure that he does it with the right proper intention and does it correctly, and with fear he finishes what he's doing. And I said to him, my husband, Matam, why are you this way? Why aren't you more loose and about it? And he told me, so I don't use my imagination thinking about another woman. And maybe my children, because I'm thinking about another woman, my children have like a tzad mamzer in them. It's not really, it's like another woman brought into existence this child because the father was thinking about another woman. Anyway, it seems that they had conversations during Tashmish. So how do you say you're not allowed to talk at all during marital relations? And so the Gemara Loikat's not difficult. Words regarding marital relation, that's permitted to talk. You're supposed to talk about marital relations, how much you mean to each other. But when it comes to other conversations about what happened during the day and other unrelevant conversations, that is not permitted during Tashmish. So what we learned over here is that Yochanan the Havai, who had a tradition from other Talmidei Chachamim, who he called angels, who told him that it's very important to do Tashmish very normally, not in a funny way, and not in the unnormal way. But the Gemara concludes that don't walk away from this Gemara. That's the only that all rabbis agreed with that. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Zi Divrei Rabbi Yochanan ben Davai. Those are the words of Yochanan ben Davai. Amar Chachamim, Ein halacha kaYochanan ben Davai. The halacha is not like Yochanan ben Davai, and you can have marital relations whichever way suits you best. Anything that you want to do with your wife, you're allowed to do. It's like a meat that comes from a butcher. So everybody likes to eat their meat a different way. If you like eating your meat with a lot of salt, you eat it with salt. Sali, you want to roast your meat, Mavushal, you want to cook your meat, Shalak, if you want to stew your meat, a fish that comes from the catch. People eat their fish and people eat their meats in different ways. These are mashals. People have marital relations differently, and you can't say that there's only one way that should fit all people. And therefore, the halacha is not like Yochanan ben Davai, even though he blamed that all the children mountainous handicaps and birth problems at birth with the child have to do with the way marital relations was done. It's not true. Amar Abema asked the question, Man Malachi Rishars, who was these holy angels that Yochanan ben Davai got his information from? Rabbanim. It means real humans. If he really spoke to angels, right? Why would Rabbi Yochanan say that we don't paskin like Yochanan ben Davai? Inhu bekia betzuas avlat fei. The angels know how children are formed. If they're telling you that children are born with handicaps because the parents are doing marital relations the wrong way, then we should paskin like Yochanan ben Davai. It must be that Yochanan ben Davai did not have this tradition from an angel. He just called the Talmidei Chachamim that he heard this from, angels. Why did he call them angels? Because they stand out like angels. So these were special types of Talmidei Chachamim that really were just Oved Hashem, and they were like angels, and they told him this secret. But Enochanami, the Gemara says, we don't have to paskin this way, and therefore you can do the way that suits you best. The Gemara just continues with two stories, and then we end the parak. Ahu da'aseh l'kamei de Rebbe. A woman came to Rebbe, and she said, Amar Malai, she said, Rebbe, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, arachti lo shulchan, I prepared the table, v'hapoche, my husband turned it over. In other words, she said, I got ready to do marital relations the normal way, and my husband turned me over. I'm not so comfortable with that. Can I tell him something? Amallah, he said to her, Biti, my daughter, Torah hitarasach, the Torah permitted you to him, Vani mo'esalech. What can I do for you? In other words, that the Torah permits this, and if this is what suits him best, then you're required to follow along. Another says, there was a woman that came before Rab. Amar Loi, she said to him, Rebbe, arachti lo shulchan, I got ready, I prepared the table, I'm ready to do marital relations, bia, and he turned me over. So Rav said, my shana min binasa. Why are you different than a fish? So these are Kabbalah Gemaras, but the point of the Gemara is that these Rav was trying to tell this lady that, look, this is the way bia is done, and this is what in your husband's head that would connect him with you, and therefore you have to acquiesce. You have to go along with what he wants. So there's a pasuk in Chumash where we say every night in Krishma, don't investigate what in your hearts, and hearts are plural. Rebbe touched the pasuk. A person shouldn't drink this cup, and have his imagination in another cup. In other words, while you're doing bia, you shouldn't be thinking about another woman. It sounds that this might even be a daraisa of being over the lav of loisasuru. Loisasuru could be a lav that you're over while you're doing bia, you're thinking about another woman. Amar Ravina said, not only is it a strange woman we're dealing with, even if it's your other wife, or you have two wives and you're thinking about one wife, the other wife, while you're having marital relations with this wife. That's also the lav of loisasuru achrei levavchem. Then we conclude this Gemara as that why are some Jews are bad Jews? Where did they come from? So the Gemara is going to conclude that it had to do with the non-sneous way that their parents did marital relations. Ubaroisi, God says, I'm going to select Mikam from you, Hamordin, those that rebel, Vapoishimbi, and those who are negligent against me. So they are bad Jews, and the God is going to select them out for whatever the context of that pasuk is. Amar Rab Levi says, Eli, these people, these Jews are bnei, sons of Tesha Midas, of 9 situations that their parents had marital relations, and because the parents had bad marital relations, that's why these children became bad Jews. And what's bad marital relations? Bnei asnas mishigach. So how do you read it? Bnei ema. The first way of a bad marital relations, if the husband intimidates his wife to have marital relations. Bnei anusa. That's also all included in Alf. Or he, in a certain way, rapes his wife. He forces her, and she doesn't want to have relations with him. Bnei senua, if he actually hates his wife. So a child born from that is a child born with bad midas. Although you can ask a question, the Chumash says that Vayar Leah ki senua, that she saw that Yaakov hated her. So how does that resolve with this Gemara? That's a question. B'nei nidoi, if one of the husband or the wife is in cherem and they're having marital relations, that also leads to bad children. B'nei tumura, b'nei tumura means an exchange wife. In other words, Rashi says you came onto one wife and you're thinking it's the other wife. B'nei miriva, or you have a wife that you're constantly arguing with and always fighting with. B'nei shichris, or the children who of either she was drunk or he was drunk when they did it. B'nei grusha saled, or he intended to divorce his wife. He didn't tell her. Then that's also children that lead to bad children. B'nei ubruvya. B'nei ubruvya is children from a woman that slept around. Maybe she fooled around when she was before she was married, or even after. You don't know who exactly the father is. So all these situations produce children that have schlechte midas. I point out to you that if you look at let's say like Obama or some famous people who did come from family situations where the bia wasn't straight, the parents slept around and the child was given up, etc. B'nei chatzufa is children from a chatzufa, means that the woman spoke not cleanly to her husband to get him to do marital relations. So the Gemara asks a question, Aini, is something wrong with that? If your wife is requesting marital relations, you'll have such good children. Even the generation of Moshe did not have such special children. Moshe Rabbeinu was searching for nevoinim, really intelligent people, creative people. Uksiv, when Moshe was finished his search, he only found intelligent people, but not creative people. He couldn't find creative people. Uksiv, but the Chumash does say Leah requested, demanded from her husband Yaakov that he should sleep with her. Uksiv Yisachar had children that were very creative. They had bina. So we see that Leah, who demanded that Yaakov have relations with her, gave birth to children who were so highly intelligent and very creative. They had bina. So we see it is a good thing for a woman to demand that her husband have relations with her. And says the Gemara, yes, it is a good thing. If she entices him in a very fine way, yes, that's a good thing. But if she talks dirty and an unrefined way, then and more like a zayna, then the children will be affected, and they'll be narcissistic, chutzpahdik children. So this is all this is interesting how all this came in as a side point in Masechta Nedarim. Hadron Allah ve'elu matarim. Be'ez Hashem will continue with the third parak tomorrow.